Hello, guys. You are right on time because I ran late because there was a small glitch due to which I had to create the entire stream again. So yeah, apologies for that. And as you already know, guys, that Arya and Nivedan have an event planned today. We have an offline meetup in Jaipur, so both of them are busy. So I'll be taking the session. So in today's session, hi Anil, hi Malay, hi Anish, hi Seven. So Seven, what is your name? I keep seeing you in every session, but I don't know your name. So type your name. Yes. Okay, guys. So I'll maybe wait for a couple more minutes before I start with the session and introduce our guest who took out his time on a Sunday morning to ensure you guys keep going with your AI education. So yeah, hi analysis, interesting name. Hi analysis. Cool. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is for all the new members, for all the new APEs members who have recently joined, let me quickly walk you through the entire presentation of APE, what APE stands for, what we, how we help you, and what you can gain from APEs. Cool. So APES, as you guys already know, stands for AI powered entrepreneurs, and it's like the uh, one of the India's first AI community that is focused on AI and entrepreneurship. So we help businesses and founders and early startups to use AI in their day-to-day business functions, business operations, and help them scale their businesses, network them better. So yeah, you guys are the best. The vision here is to make sure the community grows to 50K entrepreneurs where we help you connect, find clients, find business partners as well. I mean, who's to stop? How to make the most of apes? So you can connect, you guys get complete access to the community. I believe you already have received the links in the email, in the Telegram message, and even in WhatsApp message, right? So you guys can use that link to access the directory of the members of apes. You guys have the complete access to the apes chat. So there are two separate groups. One is apes telegram group, the professional, the primary discussion group, where we announce, we share knowledge, etc. And then there's one more group which is apes chat. I've already shared in the group how you can join that. If you guys haven't joined the chat, you can use that video or use that reference to see how you can join. I'll share the link, I'll share the video again so that you guys know. We have a couple of offline community meetups planned already. The first one is was in Mumbai, where RJ had a chat with 35 apes members. We had the venue capacity of 35 only. So we'll soon plan the next session as well in Mumbai for all those who couldn't join the first time. But yeah, today we have one planned in Jaipur as well. This is where we live. So yeah, excited to see how that turns out. Learnings, in terms of learnings, you get to learn from top experts like our today's expert. He has led the team, the AI team at Google, and he has led software engineering teams at Amazon, Yahoo, and Amex as well. So we always ensure that you guys get access to top experts. You get access to all the previous recordings of our webinars, and we host every month two master classes, or one on AI and one on business, how to scale your business. These are our past workshops, as you can see on the screen. Again, we I've already shared the links with you of our past workshops. If there are some who couldn't find the link or who couldn't access the workshops, you can ping me directly on Telegram message and I'll share the link with you. So we also hosted our first demo day last month in April, and that was a hit where we chose five pitchers, five people, and they presented their businesses. And then we also had a guest, a VC, who analyzed the pitch, who shared his feedback on what can we do to improve the business or the pitch, etc. So again, we'll be hosting the demo day soon. If you guys want to participate in the demo day, comment demo in the chat. Yes. So why we exist? Because a lot of people hope to, start their business someday, but they never take that first step. So apes exist because we wanted to push to take that first step, especially when AI is at your fingertips. And it's never been easier than that, right? Which is exactly why we have today's session, which is on the foundations of AI. And let me introduce you to our guest, Amit Agarwal. Amit Agarwal is a seasoned technology leader with 20 years of experience building innovative AI and consumer products across search, advertising, finance, and telematics. He has led global engineering teams for over a decade at Google, American Express, Amazon, and Yahoo, delivering high impact solutions at scale. He's currently building a stealth mode startup. So, if you want to know more about his startup, I think he's the guy to tell you that. So, let me introduce him now. Welcome, Amit. Thank you for taking time out on a Sunday morning for us, for the community.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for inviting me to this talk. It's always a pleasure to help others and share learnings and also learn from others. Right? Um, Great.
Guys, a
So
quick welcome message in the comments, please, so that we motivate our host speaker to share more knowledge than he already is going to. So yeah, welcome, Amit. Thank you.
well, thank you. And yeah, I think so. We are ready to get started.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Well, good morning, guys. I know this is a Sunday morning, and uh, let me just bring up my slides. Are the slides visible? Okay, now they are visible. Cool, awesome. So you guys are all awake, given that it's a Sunday morning and you all had your cup of tea or coffee, whatever you prefer. Uh, so foundations of AI non-technical perspective. First, let me give a little bit of a disclaimer, right? That although the goal here is to keep it non-technical, but non-technical is also a slightly relative term. Okay, my voice is not audible. Am I audible now? Let me come closer to the microphone and see if that helps. Is it any better now? Awesome. Cool. Yeah, so although my goal is to keep this non-technical, non-technical is a relative term, right? And in with the intention to keep it non-technical, I might have you know made it too opaque, or it might still be too technical, right, for different people. And feel free to ask any questions in between. Feel free to ping and ask any clarifying questions. I may end up using some term which I may assume that it's a generic term, but it may not be a so common term. I try not to do that, but yeah, I think let's see. So, so what is the agenda today, right? When we talk about foundation, um, we ideally want to cover these topics. What is AI, right? How AI works? How do you build an AI application, right? What are the different applications and risks of AI? The more important and the more exciting one, I guess, is what has changed in the recent years with the LLMs, right? Last 2 years have been really crazy with the kind of developments that have happened in AI, right? And it will be good to go into a little bit of guts and see what that changes, you know, from a perspective of building the AI application. Um, and then, during this talk, we also want to understand a lot of different terms: AI, ML, deep learning, data science, generative AI, AGI, and all these things. I'm sure you might have heard these terms, if not used them, and what they mean, what is the difference, right? What is an AI agent, right? People are talking about agentic AI as the new software LLMs. So LLMs have enabled uh, uh, building AI agents very quickly, and uh, but what do we really mean by AI agent, right? How is it different from AI? And lastly, but not the least, we also want to see how do we invest in AI, right? How to think about it, because AI is very exciting, but at the same time, it has costs, right? So how do we uh, look at it? Also, while the intention is to cover all these topics, I may not follow the exact order, uh, and we may go back and forth. That's perfectly okay. All right. So, what is AI? Well, I think we all know it's basically a simulation of human intelligence in machines, right? Which enables them to perform certain tasks. And these tasks may require different human cognitive functions, right? Learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, autonomy, etc. Uh, Now, it's not necessary that we may require all of these together, and sometimes maybe we may need even more. That's completely fine. But I think the key thing to understand here is that AI is essentially a simulation. Um, I mean, although we are intelligent, we still are trying to understand how our intelligence works, right? And while we make use of neural networks, I mean, these neural networks are, again, more of a simulation. And we believe that, they sort of mimic how the human brain works. Uh, but they are nowhere close to how actual human brain works. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Uh, and one thing that can actually help us appreciate AI is to sort of look at the evolution of AI. So AI is not a new term, right? I think the term itself was coined very early in 1955, right? That's so many years before. But in general, if we look at the evolution of AI, the understanding of AI has always been evolving. I mean, there was a point where people used to think like even doing simple mathematical computation can be called as AI, right? But today, I mean, of course, we wouldn't call that AI, and that has always evolved over a period of time. So, for example, even like in 1997, Deep Blue came, and that was the first time when a computer actually beat a human in a game of chess, right? And and there have been a lot of moments like this throughout the history, and every time uh, the question has been that, okay, has AI really arrived, right? The answer always has always been that, well, I mean, AI has definitely advanced, but I mean, what do you mean by arrived, right? Is it in a state where it can do anything? Uh, Definitely not. I would say that even after LLMs, right? Is AI in a state where it can actually do anything? Definitely not. But yes, I mean, it can do a lot more things, and a lot more things, a lot more effectively compared to what it was able to do 20 years back or 25 years back. So let's take a quick dive into how AI works, right? What are some core pieces of AI? And while these are the most common pieces, it's again not necessary that these may be the only pieces, or and at the same time it's also not necessary that you will always need all of these pieces, right? And we will see through a couple of examples, right, rather than just looking at this diagram. Let's look at a few examples and see how what these mean, right, in different contexts. Well, so ChatGPT is the most popular application nowadays, right? Uh, and that also, in some sense, follows this paradigm, right? So it has some pre-processing. It has a state. Uh, by the way, state basically means memory, right? And I'll talk about why that is needed, right? LM is the basic model that OpenAI has today, right, which works underneath ChatGPT. I think they call it GPT. Uh, they are called GPT models, right? And so, why do you need these pre-processing and state and all these things, right? So think about when you're chatting with ChatGPT. Uh, you will notice. By the way, I don't know if there is a way to do a quick poll or something, but maybe you can just type in the box itself. I just want to assess, like, how many of you have used ChatGPT at least once, and how many of you are using it, more regularly. So, if you can indicate that in the comments, that will be helpful. Maybe you can just write not using it, yeah, daily or regularly, and then awesome, awesome, great. So I think larger percentage of people are using it more regularly, and some people have at least used it, at least, yeah. I didn't see anyone saying that they haven't even used it. I mean, they have not used it at all. So that's great. Awesome. Yeah, so I think most people are using it extensively, and it's a great tool, right? So while using ChatGPT, you would have noticed that it understands the context, right? So what I mean by the context is, uh, while you are having the conversation with ChatGPT, so let's say, uh, let's say you want to do a research on a certain topic, right? And you start with that question, right? When you ask follow-up questions, ChatGPT knows that you are referring to the original topic of research, right? And So how does it know that, right? Uh, I think one important thing to know is when we talk about AI models in general, uh, they are stateless, as in they don't really have uh, a memory of their own. What that means is, uh, so if you give the same input, basically they are very predictable, as in, uh, for the exact same input, the output will always be predictable, right? But if there is state involved, that output can actually change, even if the input is exactly the same, right? That's what is meant by stateful and stateless. And guys, please free to ask, just call out that, hey, this is not clear, whatever I'm trying to say. So please free to call that out. Uh, and so that's where state becomes important, right? The context becomes important. And that's not just necessary in chat, that can be useful in a lot of different applications as well, right? And that's where, and this state again may not be exclusive to the AI model. You can, the state may sometimes be shared between the AI module and the rest of the system. And that depends on what kind of application it is, right? Uh, but this is the very simplified architecture of ChatGPT. So you basically have the model at the core. You will always have some pre-processing and post-processing, and of course it has a state because it knows the context, right? It knows using the state, it can actually. So you essentially pass the entire chat or maybe sometimes the summary of the chat so that LLM can actually use that context and give you a better response. um, so this is the chat GPT application, right, in a very simplistic form. um, Now let's talk about chess player. uh, so chess player also has similar components, right? It has some pre-processing. It has a state. Why does it need a state? Because I mean, the state of the chessboard keeps changing, right? And uh, the input here is just a trigger saying that okay, I mean now it's your turn to play, sort of, right? And the state changes, and depending on what the current state is and what color uh, the module is supposed to play, it will give an output in terms of okay, I mean this is the next move, right? Uh, the important point here is that see the algorithm has changed now. This is not LLM. Chess player doesn't use LLM yet. LLMs are not in a position where they can actually play chess. Although I mean people might have tried that, sure, but yeah. So the core point here is depending on the application, you may need a different AI model or AI technique to make the most of AI. And LLM may not be an answer to every AI problem. So that's the core message here. Then we can talk about credit card fraud. Now here again, there is a state, there are similar elements and all these things. Why do we need a state here, right? If you think about it, uh, uh, so you need access to the history of transactions as well, right? If I just look at only your current transaction, that's not very helpful, right? It will be very difficult for me to say that okay, I mean whether this transaction was done by you yourself or somebody ended up using your credentials to do the transaction. Um, but if I have access to the state, right? So let's say I mean you do most of your transactions in Mumbai, but then there was, and you actually did some transaction just 5 minutes back in Mumbai, and now I'm seeing a transaction uh, in Dubai. That's not possible, right? You can't essentially travel from Mumbai to Dubai in 5 minutes, right? Unless you might have given your credentials for someone else to use and stuff like that. But in general, I mean, this would be considered a fraudulent transaction. But the goal here is to give an example that how state is important in a lot of AI applications. Uh, Also, the other important thing you will see here is that the model again is different, right? We are not using LLM here. And this is again a classic case where the data is really structured here. By the way, how many people here are understand structured data versus unstructured data? So structured data is something, uh, it's basically data in columns, right? And each column has a specific semantic to it. So, for example, if you are talking about card transaction, you may have things like amount, where the credit card transaction is taking place, name of the merchant, right, location of the merchant, what is the average credit card transactions you have done uh, in the past 30 days or past 90 days, and you may have several such columns like that, right? This is basically a structured data where uh, it's basically it is multidimensional, but each dimension of the data has certain meaning, right? As opposed to unstructured data, unstructured data is typically text, uh, images, videos, etc. Right? Why this is unstructured? So, for example, if we take a image, right, uh, and we may give always like the same size image to the AI system. We'll always convert our image size into a size which is understandable by the AI system. And let's say it is like 200 by 200 pixels. But even then, what happens is each pixel, I mean, it's just a number, right? There is no semantics associated with it. Although it's still specific dimensions and all that. Uh, there is no specific semantics associated with it, and that's why it's unstructured data, right? AI has the capability to extract the semantics out of it, and that's where some of the techniques like deep learning and LLMs really shine. So yeah, and so here again, credit card fraud GBDT actually stands for gradient boosted decision trees. This is still, I think, still one of the more popular techniques used for structured data. But depending on the problem, again, there are lot other techniques like random forest or yeah, I mean there are more algorithms like that. I just don't want to throw the names here. uh, yeah. But yeah, I mean I'm happy to sort of I mean feel free to reach out. I'll definitely request Nidhi to share my contact details. But in case if you need to understand, depending on what kind of application you are building, if you have any questions about what kind of techniques are more useful or less useful, always happy to help. Uh, this is another example, sentiment classification, and so this is a case where you will notice that the state is gone. Why? So here we have assumed that the problem is simple, where let's say we have reviews coming in. Let's say we are looking at Amazon reviews uh, as an example, and we just want to do a sentiment analysis for each review, right? So here you don't really need a state, and I hope you'll agree with that. And so you can just look at the review and yeah, you can use deep learning techniques here. Given that it's unstructured data, deep learning techniques work a lot better. uh, and now this is being replaced by LLM, and we will see how that changes right later. But traditionally, if you look at 5 years back, this is how people would be solving sentiment classification problem, right? So they would use a deep learning model. They would typically build a deep learning model to train their sentiment classifier. What is news? Seven man. There is a comment. Is there a specific question you have? Okay, I'll just proceed. But if you have any specific question, please. Yeah, sentiment classification can be used in news as well, right? As to whether the news carries a negative connotation or. And there again, I mean, you don't really need a state, right? Because I mean, that's just a piece of text input. You need to look at it and uh, yeah. So now that we understand the typical AI module, right? I mean, these are the four pieces, right? There's a preprocessor. The goal here is to, uh, multiple things: capture the state as well, add the state along with the input, and also, format the data into a form where AI model would really understand. And the post process essentially does the reverse, right? And but the AI model is the crux here and takes the most amount of time to build something. So when we look at AI application, the first step is really that is important is you need to define the problem, right? What from an application perspective, what is the problem that you are trying to solve, right? Uh, and then based on that, design and implement AI modules, right? And depending on the application, again, you may or may not need, you know, you may either need just one module or you may need multiple modules. And sometimes, of course, you will also need a lot of non-AI modules as well, right? If you are building an application, you are building an entire system. So it's not always like all your modules will be AI modules. You will have a lot of non-AI modules as well. And Yeah. Uh, but what will happen is usually the design and implementation of AI models typically take uh, the most amount of time in terms of, and this is the standard process, right? So how do you build a AI model, right? So, for example, if you talk about sentiment classification in news, essentially you will have to collect a good number of news articles, right? At least in the order of 500 to 1,000 news articles, right? From different sources. Also ensure that there's a lot of variety in the data, right? So that you are able to train the model, right? This is basically like using examples to train your AI, right? So you are giving the examples of input and output to the AI, and AI is essentially learning the intelligence from that. So if your data is junk, then I mean AI will actually end up learning junk, and so that's important. And so once you train the model, you evaluate what is the performance of that model, both on your the data that you use for training and also on some data that it has not seen, right? That's a very important step when you evaluate AI model performance. And then once you are okay with the model performance, so for example, if we look at news classification, um, if you end up using all your articles, let's say from only a single newspaper, uh, like Times of India, right? And now, now think if that AI model will actually work well on any news article, right? Because what will happen is internally it will learn that pattern that or pattern of writing that Times of India uses, right? And that may or may not be the pattern that every other newspaper uses, right? So that can be a challenge. How do you train an AI model? So since the goal was to keep this non-technical, uh, I mean, I'm not going into details here, but in general, if you look at, yeah, thanks for, sorry, are you trying to share a video regarding how to train an AI model? Is that the intent, or is that a question? You can use Hugging Face to train the AI model. Actually, in the LLM world, there's no need for training AI model. So, but we'll come to that later. Uh, in the traditional approach, yes, I mean, if you are trying to build a credit card fraud detection, then you have to train an AI model. But essentially, I mean, there are tools available for these. And the first step is you have to define the problem, and then you have to pick a technique, right? And you may actually evaluate multiple techniques for the same problem, and that's perfectly okay. And so let's say you chose gradient boosted decision trees. You typically will you will have a lot of libraries available. There will also be a platform of choice that you will have to figure out. As in, are you going to use Python? If you're, yeah, I think for building AI models, Python is the language of choice. But now, if you are using Python, then again there are different choices. uh, like I mean Facebook has their own thing. Google has TensorFlow, right? And these are the two largely popular frameworks that are used. So you have to decide on the framework. Then once you decide on the framework, I mean, these framework basically give you short, uh, a very simple way to sort of train the model. Once you sort of like create the data in the right uh, format and all those things. So let me not go into the details on that, but happy to share more details offline. So cool. I mean, we have looked at a few AI applications. There are a lot many AI applications: autonomous driving, ad targeting, speech recognition, and but when you're thinking of AI, it's also important to think about the risks, right? Data quality is always a risk, right? Data quality, as in what data was actually used to train the AI model. Overfitting is a risk, and that can happen because of the data quality or because of the technique or how you actually ended up training the model. It could be either of two. Whether your data is biased, right? So, for example, if you look at sentiment classification in news, for example, right? Now, if you purposely uh, give uh, train it with news, let's say, which has 10% negative news and 90% positive news, uh, and the real world data may have a very different distribution, and that can actually lead to a lot of model performance issues. Data privacy is an issue, as in uh, and this happens a lot in case of compliance world as well, where are you actually allowed to use certain attributes to actually train your AI model? So for example, when you are trying to determine credit worthiness of a person, are you supposed to use the gender of a person? uh, Definitely not, but these are some things that you need to be careful about, right? So generative AI, again, the term has, this is more of an industry term that has come after the advent of LLM, right? Do I have to do? Sorry, I'm just reading the question. So it depends. I mean, you're training the model for, I mean, is this just an exploratory purpose, or you are, so by the way, with LLMs, right? I mean, we might be doing a lot of AI tasks, right? uh, uh, and we don't really need to train a model for that, right? And again, why don't we hold on to this thought for a little more, and we'll try and answer when we come to what has LLM changed, right? For In terms of building the model. So generative AI is basically, the term came after the advent of LLMs, right? And this is largely tied to how LLMs work. So we'll see. But what it basically means is it's a form of AI that is able to produce text, images, videos, and other types of content. And but the underlying capability that enables this for generative AI is its ability to understand these content, right? Because I mean, if you're not able to understand these kind of content, there's no way you can actually generate these kind of content. So that's the main thing. Uh, let's quickly look at LLM, right? So LLM is not a technique. That's one thing you should know. It is essentially, it uses a deep learning technique, right? LLMs are essentially large language models, which basically means that, I mean, these are like very very huge neural networks, and trained on almost like web scale data, right? And that's the reason they are called large language models, because I mean, they themselves are large, and at the same time, I mean, they are also trained on a very large scale data. And typically, the LLMs are of two types. There is a base LLM and instruction tune LLM. So base LLM is the sort of the core piece of any LLM, and this can take typically months to train if you are training on web scale data. But what it essentially does is it just predicts the next word. It tries to predict. It's basically a sentence completion, right? That's what the base LLM typically does. So if you give it a phrase where once upon a time there was a unicorn, then it will actually complete that. But if you try asking it a question, it may not really understand that it's actually a question, right? And it may just mimic the question, and it may not really give you a response. Instruction tuned LLM. So what happens is once you train the base LLM, typically what these companies do is uh, they create an instruction tuned data set, and they basically use it to tune the LLM in such a way that it's able to understand instructions as opposed to because if it is just sentence completion. Think about it, right? Would ChatGPT be as interesting if it was just a sentence completion, right? Now that it's able to understand instructions, it's more natural to interact for humans with ChatGPT, right? And so that's the reason this is done. And so now, if you ask the same question to an instruction tune LLM, then it will give a definite response. And this is again a big shift in uh, traditional models and LLMs, right? LLMs can actually produce text, meaningful text, right, as a response. This was never possible earlier. Even with deep learning, like all the initial models that started, right? I mean, we were able to like classify images very well. This is how the deep learning got really exciting, right? And but still, they were producing a very binary or a mathematical response. Or a very short response or very crisp response, uh, or in fact, in other words, uh, actually, it's not just about producing text or this thing. Also, it's also about the fact that the mod like one model is able to solve a lot of problems or can answer a lot of questions as opposed to just answer a specific question that it was built for, right? So 5 years back, like I mean, we had a lot of like sentiment classifiers or image classification models, and if you pick any of the open source models, but that's the only thing they would be able to do, right? I mean, they would be built to detect certain classes of images, and that's all they would output, right? LLM is changing that game, has changed that game drastically. You can give LLM an image. Now, LLMs have also become multimodal, by the way, right? They just not accept text, but you can give it an image, and you can specifically ask, okay, I mean, what do you see inside the image, right? And it will actually give you a very accurate answer in most cases. And that's how LM has changed everything, right? And that also changes how we build a lot of these things. And by the way, or let me come to that later, right? I mean, when we talk about building AI application, the process is slightly different versus if you are using ChatGPT in day-to-day life. I mean, there we don't really need to do any kind of like model building or anything like that. Why? Because there, like whatever response ChatGPT is giving, we as a human can evaluate if that makes sense or not, right? And sometimes yes, it can give wrong answers or it may not really work as well. But since there is a human in the loop, it's like safer to you don't really worry about training the model and all those things, right? Uh, this training process or building this is more applicable when you are actually building an AI application, right? And deploying that application in production for other users, for your users, or it may be internal to the company, or it can be for your customers, right? Whatever it is. So, so let's see how LLM changes the traditional approach, right? So this was the traditional approach for sentiment classification, where you would have to, let's say you are building a sentiment classification for news articles, right? So you would uh, train deep learning models using some data points for the uh, news articles, right? And these data points would essentially say that, okay, I mean, these are the news articles, and this is their sentiment, right? So you and that's the label data, and that's what, and then the model would sort of like derive intelligence from that. Now with LLM, that is not needed at all. Why? Because the LLM itself is able to do these things on the fly, right? You don't really need to train a LLM per se. All you need to do is actually just need to pre-process the input in a form of prompt, right? And this is where prompt engineering has evolved, right? And this is where the prompt engineering has become really, really powerful. So here, what we do is, uh, so we can try this simple thing in ChatGPT, right? What you can do is pick any news article, right? And just tell the ChatGPT that help me classify the sentiment in this news article into positive or negative, right? And I mean, just look at the answer that it gives, and it will be able to do out of the box, right? And it will do it quite accurately. And so that's the beauty of LLM, right? A lot of AI problems which needed a customized model, LLM is actually able to do out of the box. But at the same time, it's important to remember that LLM is still not in a place where it can do everything. Uh, I mean, it can do a huge number of things, but depending on the application, like even credit card fraud today, right? If you think that you can just pass like a list of or a history of transactions to LM and let it determine whether the last transaction was is fraudulent or the current transaction is fraudulent or not, it may not do a good job of that. Right? And so that's something to be careful about. It really depends on the kind of application. So the thumb rule is any kind of unstructured problem, LMs will deal with that very well. Creative problems, thinking problems, right? You might even want to get your deck evaluated with LLM. You can actually ask suggestions from ChatGPT or LLM about how to improve your deck, and you can do all those things. And yeah. So what this changes, right? I mean, so if you remember, the earlier model or the earlier process of building an AI model was this, right? I mean, you essentially needed to get labeled data. You would you would choose a technique, and train the AI model on that data. You would evaluate the performance, and this is a cyclic thing, by the way. Like you do training, you evaluate, and you may realize that something is wrong, and this can be a cyclic process, right? And once you are comfortable, make a call that, okay, I mean, you are ready to deploy the model, right? And it can be a grueling exercise, actually. It used to be a quite a grueling exercise, and could range from anywhere. It would take months, basically, uh, uh, deploying any AI model in production. And then if it's some critical model like fraud model, then I mean, you have to do continuous improvements also, right? It's not just first time deployment. So why some LLMs can access internet? So by the way, LLM itself cannot access internet. That's something uh, is important. So usually the internet access is done by the pre-process module, right? Where the pre-process module has the ability to connect to different tools, right? And yeah, so for example, chat gpt, right? Chat gpt is a tool, it's an application, right? And if you ask it to analyze a link, it will actually download that link, and it will. So basically, you can actually give ChatGPT a link and ask it to summarize that link, for example. So the important thing to note here is that ChatGPT, the model, the GPT model that is being used by ChatGPT, that itself is not connected to the internet, right? And so this process actually happens outside the model. And so then, to answer your question, it really depends on the kind of application that is being built, right? So LLMs themselves don't have AI connectivity, have internet connectivity, but the application that is built on top of LLM can definitely connect to internet and give it actually, fetch the content, give it to the LLM, and so on and so forth. So that's how it happens. Okay, so coming back to traditional approach, so this was a traditional approach, right? It would take months. But the LLM approach becomes very simple. You just formulate some kind of a prompt. So, for example, the input is, let's say, the news articles. Now you will, for each news article, you will create a prompt saying that, okay, I mean, help me classify this news article into positive or negative class, and then you will paste that actual article right in the prompt itself, and you'll pass this entire statement to the LLM, and you're done, right? And so that's the beauty of it. But at the same time, let's see if you can point out, what can be some downsides to this. Any thoughts? You can write in the comments. So what is the downside to the LLM based approach, right? So we have reduced the model training requirement from months to just a few weeks, right? So that's awesome. And by the way, here we are talking about production application, right? So yeah, building our production applications. So one thing that you need to remember is that okay, so there are two broad things. Prompt has to be well structured. Well, I mean, that's a part of the prompt engineering process, and that's why it takes a few weeks and it doesn't take a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, that's the process of building. That's the process of LLM based approach to building an AI model. Um, that's not really a downside. It's just a shift, right? So instead of building the actual model, now we have moved the problem from the model to pre-processing step, right? Where we are basically doing the prompt engineering, and that's fine. Uh, See, there are two caveats here. One, I mean, so this is the recommended approach people talk about. There is no evaluation of the performance here, right? And that doesn't need to be the case. But I just used what the industry standard is and wanted to point out, you know, what may be some downside to that. Uh, but ideally, if you are deploying this in production, you still would want to, evaluate the performance of this to ensure. Otherwise, I mean, it's you can never guarantee that it will always work or not work. So it's always helpful to still evaluate the performance. That's one. And so I would ideally, add this box as well. Evaluate the AI module performance in the LLM based approach. That's one. Second, LLM is huge, right? It's basically billions of parameters, right? And calling the model uh, is, I mean, it's quite costly. You need, I mean, most of these models require a GPU, right? Mostly you will use a hosted service like OpenAI or other things to call these models. And but that's the key, right? There's a huge cost to calling the model. Uh, Compared to the traditional approach where a lot of models would still work on the CPU itself. So I think that's the trade-off. And so that's where you need to do some trade-off analysis in terms of why, or how to sort of like whether it makes sense or not, right? The LLM based approach, it may or may not make sense. Like it's also about, I mean, you may have, if you already have a lot of legacy application built using traditional approach and you are trying to move to LLM based approach, uh, you definitely need to ask this question. The other aspect is maintainability, right? From a maintainability standpoint, LLM may definitely be a cheaper approach in terms of yeah. No new data. That's a great question. That's a great point again, right? So LLM is basically, once you decide to use the LLM, you will typically use a certain version of it, right? And that version is trained on some history of data. And so, how do you actually, uh, you know, uh, improve the model? And I guess that's a question. Oh, sorry. Am I still not audible? I thought I was audible. Anyways, so, but yeah, I mean, LLMs are still helpful. But yeah, the question to know new data is that, I mean, you do need to keep upgrading your LLM model once in a while so that your LLMs are refreshed, right? And you get the version that is trained on the latest version of data. So that is important. So now that uh, so this was a traditional approach, right? I mean, where the focus was, I mean, if you have a AI application, the focus would be more on building the AI models, figuring out what AI models to build and uh, which ones to not build. So, and this has changed, right? I mean, there is no point of you don't need a model. LM can be used as the underlying model in most cases. You do need to build AI modules, but these AI modules are like very cheap to build, right? In terms of, I mean, you can use prompt engineering and um, build these modules very easily, and so that just reduces your uh, the entire cycle to or the time taken to build the AI application. The cost is still high. The cost of running the application is still high, so that's something you need to be mindful of. When it comes to generative AI for text, again, there are huge applications, right? Semantic understanding is just one of them, where we talk about sentiment classification. But yeah, now a lot of things become easier, right? You can build custom chatbots, you can build domain-specific chatbots, you can do summarization easily. Search has also become very easy nowadays, right? I haven't specifically gone into the mechanics of how search itself can be improved using LLMs, but yeah, happy to answer some of these things offline. Translation becomes easier, data analytics, a lot of things become easier. But there are a lot of new risks as well, and that's something you need to understand, right? One is, and this is, I would say, the biggest risk: inability to distinguish between fact and creative content, right? So when LLM gives you an output, it itself doesn't really know whether it is sticking itself to the facts or not, and and then there are ways to I mean, help LLMs, and this problem is usually called as hallucination in the AI world, where you can actually trick the LLM to sort of give wrong answers as well, by the way, and yeah, so that's something to be mindful of. Inability to attribute and credit source of information, right? LM cannot really attribute as to from where it actually derived the information. So when you ask it, okay, what is the capital of France? It may give you the right answer, but I mean, it may or may not really know from where or what was the source of information for it to actually derive that data, right? Uh, and then the other problem is at least in today's world, the private models owned by the private companies are more popular, right? OpenAI or Gemini, and these models are more popular compared to the open source models. Uh, so when it comes to the open source models, they at least tell you what data sources or what data sets they use, right? But uh, these private companies may not really expose that information. So that becomes a risk as well. So now let's quickly. I mean, we have talked a lot about how to build AI application, and we talked about different AI techniques as well. But I think we have covered the landscape to a good extent. So it will be good to understand where all these techniques relate to each other, right? And how these sort of relate to each other. What do we mean by these common terms? So AI, artificial intelligence, is actually a very broad field, right? And it has a lot of different kinds of techniques. And machine learning is a set of techniques, right? So things like gradient boosted decision trees or deep learning. I mean, these are a set of techniques that fall in the machine learning world. What machine learning stands for is where you sort of like train the machine to be intelligent by learning from data, right? So learning from data is the key when you think about machine learning. And but at the same time, we also saw that for something like a game of chess, the technique used was very different, and that doesn't even actually belong to the machine learning class of techniques, right? So minimax algo is a very different kind of technique that's used, and but that's perfectly fine. So the core message is, you need to think of the technique based on the application, right? It's not the other way around. Uh, And then a lot of these terms, like data science, is a term that was coined in the last decade, right? It's sort of it's very difficult to, honestly, for me, I kind of hate this term because, it kind of, it's a term that actually came from industry, right? And uh, when terms come from academia, they at least have a well-defined meaning in terms of what they mean. But when terms come from industry, there can be a lot of ambiguity around what they actually mean. But data science, in some sense, is a intersection of a lot of different fields, which could be AI and data engineering in some sense. Large language models, again, the technique that large language models use is deep learning. LLMs just mean that, I mean, these are really, really huge models, which, large number of parameters. Uh, and they essentially, you can, the good analogy is like the human brain itself, right? I mean, human brain is larger compared to, I mean, it's the largest brain compared to other animals, right? And same thing we are seeing with LLMs. So the larger the size of the model, the more intelligence it has. Let's see if that trend actually continues, but that's interesting though. And but essentially, the technique is still deep learning. The core technique that is being used is deep learning. Generative AI is just another term for the LLMs. That's again an industry term that has become popular. And then we have artificial general intelligence. Now, the idea of AGI is that, okay, I mean, you have a single model and it can actually do everything. LLMs have taken a huge leap towards that direction, but it's nowhere close to sort of like achieving that goal completely. But AGI is basically that okay, you'll have a single box and all your intelligence requirements will be solved using that single box. So that's what is meant by artificial general intelligence. Um, cool. So let me just look at the comments if I missed out anything. This count has to be well structured. So we are not necessarily limited to existing data. I think I would like to understand what you mean by this better. Um, I mean, LLMs may have, uh, in terms of facts, there may be a limitation, right? So, I mean, let's say if you are using a LLM model that was built in Jan of 2024, it would not have access to all the things that have happened in the world during the last year. But that may be totally fine depending on the application. And uh, it still has continues to have the same level of cognitive ability though, right? The only thing that is missing is the facts. And typically, yeah, so I think that's what I would like to understand better as to what you mean by we are limited to existing data with LLM. If I build an online chatbot using it. No. LLM is not going to absorb this training data automatically. It's not going to. And that's where, and that's a great question, by the way. So let's say you have an LLM, right? And but you are building a very domain-specific chat tool, right? Let's say you want to build a chat tool for medical professionals. Uh, Now, I mean, the LLMs, if they have been trained on medical data, which is true for ChatGPT, by the way, ChatGPT can actually has been trained with a lot of it understands the medical terms pretty well. So that's not a yeah. I'm just trying to think of a better domain. Um, or let's say, I mean, you are a huge organization and you have a lot of internal data, right? That the LLM uh, does not have access to, right? And in that case, I mean, can you actually, how can you still leverage the LLM? So there is something called as, um, yeah, army or defense. That's a good example again. So, by the way, um, uh, there is an architecture called as RAG. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you got the answer in the comment itself. And so the RAG architecture kind of takes care of these kind of applications where the LLM can still be. It's okay if the LLM itself is not trained on your data, but you can actually augment that LLM with additional data and still make the most out of it without actually requiring to train the LLM. Training the LLM is of course also possible, and it again depends on whether you want to fine tune the LLM for that specific domain or not. Uh, in most cases, RAG framework would actually give better results, but depending on the application, there may be a need to sometimes fine tune, like take the LLM that is available in the open source world, and then use your custom data that is actually not available in the that's not available publicly, and fine tune the model. That's perfectly possible. But it's largely depends on the cost and benefit trade-off again. And yeah. So with that, maybe let's briefly go into what's an AI agent, right? No, the data will not be absorbed by the LLM. Yeah, so LLM is stateless. That's something you need to understand. So if you give any sensitive data, by the way, it also depends on how you know, what how you are actually using the LLM, right? So if you use the open source LLM and you are actually deploying it your own infrastructure, that's the safest way to ensure privacy. If you are passing this data to OpenAI, then or any other like hosted infrastructure you are using, right? Then actually you need to see their privacy clauses and make sure that they sort of like uh, honor the privacy. But on it itself, I mean, it won't definitely like the LLM is not going to automatically consume the data. I mean, that will never happen. But they should also not use like whatever data you are sending them for future training, at least, right? That's something you need to ensure, and you need to uh, make sure that I mean their uh, data privacy agreements are taking that into account. But the safest thing to do is, I mean, take a open source LLM is if the data is so if the data privacy is really so important, take the open source LLM and actually host it in your own infrastructure. The LLM is not going to absorb that information on its own. So when we talk about AI agent, right? AI agent is basically now a little bit more powerful than a simple AI module. AI module was basically okay. I mean, given some input, it will produce output, right? And then you design the AI module to sort of like do whatever you want. But AI agent can do a lot more, right? It can take actions on your behalf. So, for example, let's say you can actually connect it to your calendar, give access to your calendar, and you can say that okay, I mean, I want an appointment with this person, so why don't you write an email to this person and set up a meeting, okay, and give access to your email account and calendar account, right? And the AI agent can actually go ahead and do that, right? It will write an email, and uh, it will basically write an email. It will wait for the response. It may even send a reminder after a few days and all that. It can actually take care of that. But some of the main components for an AI agent are basically it drives. I mean, it essentially performs certain actions relying on planning and reasoning, right? And the planning and reasoning is still performed by one or more AI modules. And in this case, it can be just LLMs in most cases. And but it's basically trying to achieve a certain goal, right? Uh, and the other important aspect is it may perform these actions either completely autonomously or it may seek user confirmation before every action, right? Depends on how, and this will again depend on the instructions that you are given to the AI agent, and how you have actually configured AI agent. And so this is where AI becomes a lot more exciting because now you can think of hiring like an army of agents or building a army of agents for yourself who can actually do a lot of work, a lot of like repetitive work that you need to just offload, right? And they can do it pretty effectively. Uh, so let's see how we are doing on time. I think we have still 10 minutes. I do want to, okay, that's just the last slide. So yeah, we can go through this slide but let me see if there are any additional questions. So I answered the sensitive data question. LM automatically doesn't absorb data, but yeah. Cool. So investing in AI has been there for a long time, right? And the general approach has been that okay, I mean, you need to assess the cost versus benefit. From an organization perspective, if you are thinking about building an AI, sometimes it can be the part of your tool itself, right, and or the product itself. It may be a core component of the product that you are thinking about. Uh, but the thing to think there is as to what is the investment required to build that AI module, right, from ground up. That is one question you need to ask. The second thing you need to be wary about is it's not like once you build a AI module, you're done with it, right? It typically needs continuous improvement because, uh, I mean, these are uh, slightly different from engineering or other engineering systems where the systems are deterministic, right? AI modules are not exactly deterministic. And also, what happens is over a period of time, like the data distribution changes, a lot of things change, right? Newer techniques come up, all those things happen. So, uh, and typically you use AI modules uh, for something which actually gives you a huge value, huge returns, right? And so it always generally makes sense to uh, keep making an investment to continually improve the model. And the third is what is the operational cost of the AI module itself, right? So, for example, I mean, if you are moving from traditional approach to LLM, the cost will definitely increase. But what is the trade-off, right? What is the kind of benefit that you are getting? So that's where measuring the benefit becomes very important. If you are not able to, I mean, if you are thinking about building some AI and if you are not able to measure the benefit, that's where you need to sort of think through as to, you know, uh, is it really worth it, right? And when you think of benefit, it should ideally impact, top line or bottom line of your balance sheet. So that's what I generally recommend. Uh, with LLMs, though, there is a new addition now, right? I mean, we can use tools like ChatGPT as a partner to improve our productivity. And nowadays we are getting a lot of specialized tools as well. And this requires evaluation, though I haven't tried myself. I mostly use ChatGPT or Gemini to do most of the things that I need to do. And Yeah, the only thing is that when you think about these things as improving productivity, this assessment becomes a little bit more difficult, but at the same time it's still a risk worth taking because the costs are fixed, right? As in per person costs are fixed, right, depending on the subscription, the kind of subscription that you are taking. So yeah, investing in AI is definitely important in today's world. And if you want to start as to, if you're thinking as to where do I start, right? Then I think these new additions, like just to improve your productivity, I mean, that's the first starting point. That should be the first starting point. And then slowly you can think about where AI would actually, make a difference to your business, right? Uh, yeah. So with that, thank you all for your patience. I know it's Sunday morning and it's difficult to listen to so much of, yeah, so many things in a continuous way. So thank you. Uh, Available for any questions. Feel free to.
Hi Amit, hi. Thank you for this amazing and in-depth session. I think many people enjoyed the insights. Now, I would like to ask the community if they have any questions, guys. If not, I can ask one or two questions that I already have in mind, which are like basic and should be helpful to the members here. Okay, so we have someone asking one question. Pro or okay, does Pro or Plus subscription offer any advantage apart from limit? So are you talking about ChatGPT? I believe he is. So
I
yeah.
believe so. Yeah. I mean, so generally, what happens is it's not just about the limit. It's also about the kind of models you have access to. So, for example, the ChatGPT free version will have access to some of their older models, and uh, if you have subscription, then you will get a newer model. What you can actually do is you can take a subscription. I mean, usually I think you get like 1 month free subscription, right? You can use that to actually evaluate whether you see any difference in using the free version as opposed to using like the newer model for your purpose, and then take a call whether it makes sense to take subscription or not. Yeah, if that is the question. GPT or Claude, again, it depends on. Sorry.
This helps. Thank you. So I think you answered this question. So if I wanted to use RAG or fine tune when working with the chat FAQ bot. So this is another question by Devjit.
Uh, Honestly, I'm not understanding the exact question here. If you're asking whether you should use a RAG or use a fine-tuned LLM, then my recommendation would be to use a RAG first, right? And that's always a simpler approach because I mean you can just pick any model, and fine-tuning always means that fine tuning is a complicated process, right? It's not a very straightforward process, and so always try a RAG based approach first, and uh, and try and understand. And if it's not working well, see, it cannot work well for certain reasons, like if it is very domain specific, and the existing LLM doesn't have the ability to even comprehend as what is being written, or right. And it can happen if there are a lot of like domain specific terms, or company specific terms which are not really used in public. That happens very less, by the way. So in most of the cases that would not happen. So you really need to have an answer uh, to sort of like fine tuning the LLM. Um, Always go
So
for
this is
RAG.
another question. We have another question by Seven Man. For a news aggregated service that summarizes the description using AI, is this a case of copyright infringement or can I claim fair use?
Yeah, I mean, so depends on how you're using it, right? I mean, if you're actually building a service and exposing that to the public, uh, till you start getting a lot of traffic, I think people would not care about it. But once you start seeing a lot of traffic, then yes, it will be a case of copyright infringement, or uh, then it's basically like once you start earning money, right? I mean, then this news, yeah, but technically it is a copyright infringement, but it depends on how you are actually using it. So yeah, that's the right answer.
Technically, everything is copyright infringement when it comes to AI, right? So as
That is
long
true.
as you're not using to monetize anything, you can claim it as fair use, I believe.
Exactly.
So there's one more question by Rishabh. He's asking for a user what should be the model to choose, and for a business which model to choose.
Uh, I mean, I would always recommend to start with like the OpenAI models. In my experience, at least, they have always worked better than the other models. But then again, I mean, these experiences can be different for different people depending on the application, by the way. So uh, I would say it's okay to start with the OpenAI model, but uh, I think if you are deploying something in production, it's your responsibility to evaluate a lot of different models, and yeah, that's always uh, uh, a saner approach, right? So evaluate multiple things for your use case, and then take a call. But yeah, if you just want to start, like definitely evaluate OpenAI. That's, that's something I would definitely recommend. How is Claude better than? Yeah, I think Claude has its own. So I happen to use Claude myself, and but from what I have heard is Claude is basically useful in things like so. It's really good if you want to do designing, right? So if you want to do UI design, it can actually give you. the wireframes and all those things, right? And that's what I've heard again. But I think when it comes to sort of like understanding these things deeper, it's always better to. I mean, the first thing you can always start off is like just search in terms of how people compare cloud APCs. You'll get a lot of like Medium articles or a lot of technical articles where people talk about how they see the comparison, and so that should always be the first step. And then second step should be for your use case, you should always evaluate multiple models and see for yourself as to what works best. I mean, these things are evolving very fast, right? What is good uh, model for a particular use case today, you may actually have a different model uh, next month for that specific use case. So,
So, Amit, one more question that I have right now is like, because the session was on foundations of AI, right? So we have covered almost everything. Now my question is like, what are some AI tools apart from ChatGPT and Claude that you would want people to get their hands on or try and get better acquainted with AI? What are some tools that you use to simplify your life, and in
uh,
what ways?
I see. See, I largely use ChatGPT and Gemini, and okay, so when you say simplifying my life on a daily basis, I assume, I mean, this is not the production requirement, right? I mean, when I'm building something from a production perspective, I mean, that's a very different thought process I have, and that's a very different process in terms of how you build a AI application. For daily use, I think these are definitely good. ChatGPT is definitely the one that I use the most, and Google AI Studio again, that is useful for production applications. Uh, so for day-to-day things, I think ChatGPT works the best. But uh, I use it for different kinds of things, right? I use it in terms of uh, like if I'm trying to prepare a deck for investor, uh, like sort of like help reviewing that deck, or sometimes if I want to, create a deck for a very different purpose, and I want to, like, I can ask ChatGPT to give me at least a framework, right? And, that can be a starting point sometime. And, I do use it for coding a lot, and, um, but at the same time, there are caveats, and so I would. Uh, in most of the cases, ChatGPT gives me code that compiles well. In a lot of cases, I'm not able to find the solutions that ChatGPT is able to find, and it just gives me a very crisp answer to those. Uh, in a lot of cases, it also gives me like very bad answers. It gives me working solutions, but the solution is sometimes so unnecessarily huge and complicated that I have to sort of like read that later. So that also happens. So yeah, you have to be aware, sort of like it's not in a state where it's perfect, but it can do a lot of things. And you can also ask it to behave it like an expert, and you can brainstorm on ideas with ChatGPT, and that also works really well. And you can actually ChatGPT to ask ChatGPT to take different. You can actually say that, okay, I mean, think like an investor and help me evaluate this idea. Or you can ask ChatGPT to be like, okay, ChatGPT you can say that, okay, I mean, think like a medical expert, and help me evaluate these symptoms, right? You can do all sorts of things. So it's immensely powerful. It's amazingly powerful. So yeah, I think imagination is the limit when it comes to sort of figuring out can actually help you solve.
So I personally am a big fan of ChatGPT's deep research, and even Gemini's deep research. They are so brilliant. I mean, I use them for scripting as well. So when I'm curating the content and compiling all the news, I feed it into ChatGPT and ask it for deep research on verifying the truth and everything. Obviously, it's sometimes, I mean, I double check. I don't blindly rely on its research, but it's amazing.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of ChatGPT's deep research.
there are some
So if you
downsides like,
guys have,
yeah, nowadays, like, so for example, my daughter is now in just finished 12th, and so she's evaluating like different colleges, which college she should opt for, and all those things. So when I ask her to sort of like do a little bit of research, she just ends up asking ChatGPT, and I'm like, okay, I mean that's not the right way to do it. That's not the most reliable way to do all the research, right? So yeah, you need to be
correct.
careful.
Yeah, you always need to double check whatever you're researching on LLMs. Similar to how you research on Google and you double check all the sources, all the links, and everything. So, yeah. Uh, okay, I think we won't be taking any more questions, so this should be the end. Thank you for such a wonderful and insightful session, Amit. Guys, if you found the session helpful, do share your comments and you can connect with Amit on LinkedIn. I've already shared the LinkedIn profile link of Amit on Telegram message. I'll also share it here. But yeah, let's you know thank Amit for this session, for taking out his time on a Sunday morning.
And yeah, thank you. Thanks, Nidhi and Nivedan, for inviting me to this. And thanks for the wonderful audience. It was good to have some interaction and some questions. So always appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amit.